So far, I have discussed at great length the reach the Republic had made into other realms, but much more complicated than that are the competing empires that exist on our own Terra. Rome was not alone in being blessed with divine gifts to expand across the face of the earth. The longest border we shared was with the Empire of Cyne. From their seat of power in Loyang, the Han progressively incorporated more and more of the Far East, including its thousands of distant islands, into their Middle Kingdom. We warred with them many times in the past. At least a dozen conflicts were fought to settle the borders between our lands. For the past few decades, however, we had been in a time of peace. Same as us, Cyne recognized the existential threat of the Great Convergence. Xi's family became Roman sometime a century or so before he was born. He still learned his ancestral tongue, though, which would help us on more than one occasion when dealing with Cyne. Following my report on Aoife, I'll move on to our alchemist. Chung stands a bit shorter than me at 70 uncia tall. He is a Han by ancestry, but 4th generation as a Roman citizen. My first impression was that I'd offended him somehow. Even Decanu Zanucci's introduction had been less brief. Sophia had brought me to the Elementarsis in Monachium. Chung was in the process of purifying a new batch of Gnosite. In contrast to the many gems that lie at the heart of Roman technology, Gnosite was actually a Cynean discovery. When held or touched, it can project the images of someone's mind through the glow of its prism. When properly worked, it can be used to simply divine the will of the user and trigger various functions or manifestations. They can also store the thoughts of someone, recording them in visual writing or as spoken word in the voice of the user himself. Entire libraries of knowledge have been stored in this way, which can be multiplied from crystal to crystal. Alchemist Chung was bringing up a growth of Gnosite from a bath of mercury. The gems glowed a soft green, ready to receive knowledge. Despite Sophia's usual enthusiasm, he did not verbally respond, only a distant nod before returning to his task. Sophia apologized for him, saying he was very single-minded when working and did not like being interrupted. I barely got a glance around the Elementarsis before we were back out in the street headed for the next location. An alchemist's work is never done. Unlike the solid and movable foundations laid by the engineers of the Frentinium, the alchemists must nurture their work like a newborn infant. The Elementarsium has its eponymous laboratories always moving, like the tides of the sea. I'm sure it greatly benefits from those like Chung. Okay, can you please state your name and title?
Chung, Alchemist.
How long have you been a member of CONTUS Germanica 7?
8 years.
Why did you choose to work in a CONTUS rather than stay with the Elementarsium full-time?
Is that relevant to how I perform my work?
It's open-ended. They give us these questions for the sake of the envoys more than yourselves. It's just a formal introduction which aids in the archiving.
That's fair.
So, did you wish to give a statement?
Why I chose to work with you?
Yes. Did the Elementarsium mistreat you at all?
No, quite the opposite. I feel very much at home there.
But you prefer traveling through the other realms?
I truly believe in the work of the Ministerium. It's arguably one of the only things that binds our world together. The mutual threat from the many other worlds closing in on us. Even Cyne understands this. Our cooperation has helped both nations when the others have suffered needlessly.
Well, that's probably the best answer I could give to the Elder.
It's the truth. Truth delivers us.
Indeed. One final question. Do you have any advice for me going forward?
Be careful in our travels. Every mission is a risk. Every mission could be our last.
I will. Thank you. Whenever the CONTUS is not on a mission, the most likely place to find him is at the Elementarsis in Monachium. That being said, he is not antisocial either. Following our 10th mission, when I was no longer a primum, DeFleur offered to take us out for dinner to celebrate. It was very kind of her. She took us to a bistro off the riverfront, and to my surprise, she came along as well. At the start, he did not say much. We were breaking bread and sampling the appetizers while Sophia was going on about some story from the academy. Every few minutes she would open the window from his hand. Caestus gauntlets benefit the most from the harnessing of Gnosite. At a thought, a window of information can be opened between thumb and finger to display visuals of any kind. As non-intrusively as I could manage, I asked him what he was looking at. He opened the window larger to reveal a number of symbols with fractional measurements beside them. She apologized for the impropriety, saying he was monitoring a glowing batch of phasite. They're by far the most volatile of all the regnalianum elements they work with. If they receive too much lightning during the development process, they could trigger their own nature and vanish completely, bleeding into some adjacent realm. She then went on to tell me the story of how an entire laboratory was lost in that way. The Elementarsis in Cayla, Hispania, was upgrading their local Jovian channels. They didn't realize the old channel was still connected between the main dynamo and the lab. When the new channels were energized, all the mechanisms were overcharged. They were near the end of a growth cycle on a massive amount of phasite being prepared for Classis Hispania. Once the extra lightning hit the batch, they triggered instantly. A sphere with a radius of 300 cubits bled away in an instant. Thanks to advanced instrumentation, they were able to be found in Menagerie 5698. The workers were able to hold out in the wreckage of the laboratory long enough to be rescued before the megafauna could close in on them. It was a fascinating story, but more fascinating was the way she told it. He narratized it like an author, holding me in suspense regarding the fate of the alchemist caught in the explosion. While uninterested in the banality of small talk, she can speak very passionately when talking about a subject that truly holds his curiosity. His skills as an alchemist are what he focuses on most, of course. While I've mentioned the failing of the mission to Eremus 1349, which wasn't at all Chung's fault, another mission turned out quite differently. We had been sent to a retinacula. Realms such as these are a threat to our future not because of the creatures or strange laws that exist there, but because of the face of the earth itself. For instance, there could be a canyon so deep that it would collapse the foundations of a city when bled together. It would be like a sinkhole falling out from below. As time went on, though, we found that such topology dynamics were not the greatest threat. The opposite was true. There was one case where this happened quite dramatically. There's an island off the coast of Hispania, in the Atlanticus. The island had a small fishing village on one side which had a small population of those who preferred the simple life by the ocean. On one horrific day, a massive bleed occurred. In another realm, thereafter known as Retinacula 3436, the island had formed a few leagues west of our own. In a matter of minutes, the entire island phased through, completely consuming the village and everyone inside of it. After digging deep enough to try to rescue the village, their bodies were found essentially fossilized. Deep earth minerals had merged into every atom of their being, turning them instantly to stone. It was a truly sobering reminder why the Ministerium exists in the first place. Since then, addressing the Retinacula has been one of our top priorities. One day, Chung and the rest of us were being sent to Retinacula 4381 to rendezvous with some other Conti for a preview mission. The mountain came into view, rising nearly a league into the air. We were in the spatial equivalent of Italia, just south of the Alps. That mountain stood where the city of Torino does in Regnum Prima. If it bled through, over 1 million citizens would be instantly fossilized. After months of preparation, we were finally down to the last test. Navigator McGlasson took the Corvus in close to the northwest face of the mountain. Among the natural crevices and wear on the rock face, there was a perfectly smooth vertical shaft leading all the way down to ground level. "Lights on," Eva said, as we began our descent down the shaft. The lights of the Corvus, as well as our personal suits, were brought up to full luminosity. Alchemist Chung was on the port side of the ship with a rather large instrument, sending 3 flat bands of light into the tunnel walls. We dropped very slowly, scanning every rock layer which had accumulated over the eons. We eventually reached the point where we could no longer see the sunlight above us. Then we hit the bottom. A rough radial pattern marked the floor, where the tunneling rig had stopped moving. We did not land. Once he was satisfied with his readings, Alchemist Chung had Aoife turn the Corvus 180 degrees. He faced the ribbons of light at the rock face, and we began our slow ascent back to the top. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath on that last ascent, but seeing sunlight again was like surfacing from a dark ocean. We drifted off from the mountain and docked with the Ignavis closest to our position, Hades' Kiss. Once secured to the ship, an Alchemist Peritus was standing there waiting for us. Chung crossed the gangway, holding the man-sized light emitter apparatus. He handed it to a Classicus standing by the Peritus, then presented the high-ranking alchemist with the Nausilibur gem containing all the information the device recorded. They had a short conversation where Chung was able to verify the readings. Having positive results, they were ready to proceed with the mission. The other 5 Conti reported similar findings from the other board shavs. Unfortunately, we had to return home without personally witnessing the next part, though the footage would be seen everywhere by the next week. Hades' Kiss, as well as 5 other Ignavis-class warships, floated into place over the vertical shavs. In a rehearsed timing, the ships each dropped a single massive conflagratio charge. They then quickly sped away from the mountain. The 6 explosions completely tore the mountain to pieces, creating a column of ash wider than the Pillars of Hercules. The result of the demolition left a shallow crater a few dozen cubits below ground level in Regnum Prima. Torino had one less threat against it, and that was thanks to alchemists like Chung. Signed, Ulysses Adelbrecht, Envoy, CONTUS Germanica 7, 11 Augustus 2403. Oh yeah, one less threat. Months of manpower and 1,000,000 libra of refined, exotic reactive elements. All to, what? Buy time? Sisyphean doesn't even begin to come close to how pointless it all was. Forgive me. My anger is not directed at those like she. He was a good man, a great citizen in every respect. He served the people of Rome to the best of his ability. It's pointless to blame the soldier for the orders of his captain.